Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Dave Molenda with us today. Dave is a best-selling author. He's a business and sales coach, DISC and EQ certified coach, that is, keynote speaker and breakout speaker. And he also has a podcast called Positive Polarity. This one's going to be fun. It's brought to you by podper.com. If you want to start, scale, monetize a podcast. Dave, welcome to the pod again. Tell me a bit more about yourself
Charles.
and what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on the show. Super excited to hang out with your listeners and viewers around the world. Again, I had a business in the 90s and the 2000s, and through that from $0 to selling it when it was doing 10 million in annual sales, and then was able to take that knowledge and turn it into a coaching business, turning it into a book, and then now we're over 200 episodes deep in our podcast. So we do that like you have people from around the world share their valuable wisdom, and hopefully today somebody will walk away with something that we're able to share with them.
So let's start with your exit. Why did you have to sell the business? And was it a net loss or was it something that you gained from?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I love coaching, and I realized from 2008 to 2012, when we grew our business by 47%, that a lot of it was coaching our existing clients, and I just fell in love with that. And when I sold, excuse me, we made money on it. So it's always good to get a check rather than bring a check to a closing a business. So that worked out really well for me. And then I just transitioned into coaching, and then in 2020 started the Positive Polarity podcast, and again have been just sharing content around the world ever since.
Your book, how did it came about? How long did it take you? And do you feel it has been successful for you?
Yeah, absolutely. As a speaker, one of the things that people ask you a lot about is, do you have a book? Do you have a podcast? Can I read more? Can I learn more about you? So the book was kind of a natural progression for me. I loved the ability to write it. I'm not an writer, so I had somebody help me with it. So I would talk through my concepts, and then somebody would go and put it onto paper. So for anybody listening, there might be a way that you might be intimidated by writing a book. I'd encourage you to find somebody, a ghostwriter, a publisher, somebody to partner with to be able to do that, because it's a great journey, Charles, to be able to write a book and then turn it out to be an Amazon #1 bestseller was even more fun.
Tell me a bit more the positive polarity. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, there's so much negativity in this world right now that we are trying to create as much positivity as we can. We need it in our lives. We need, that every day in businesses. Our teams need to be positive. Our customers, hopefully, they get a positive experience. So, the book is about strengthening your team and then improving your customer's experience. And when you do those two things, profit automatically happens. And you need a positive experience for your customer, and you need a positive team. So just love talking about being positive and trying to find small ways to change the world.
And you say there's a lot of negativity in our world right now. What do you attribute that to?
I have that's a great question. I mean, for us in the US, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the two-party political thing, if you look at it that way. People tend to look at the bad side of something. They look at a glass half empty rather than it's half full. We have beautiful weather, but then yet it's going to rain. I mean, people want to be negative, and I don't know where that came from, but I'm just trying to do my best to flip that around and have somebody look at what's positive in their life, and the good attributes that their family and all the people around them have.
And any tips for people to be a bit more positive? For example, I myself, I think that I'm a positive person, yet I do think that when I'm writing content, I need to be contrarian to add a spice and add an insight that other folks wouldn't have normally. I do think the
Sure.
counter effects of that is that I may sound negative sometimes, and I may become negative because this online persona of mine, might psychology will attribute it with myself. But
Sure.
I do meditate. I do not watch the news. I do not watch TikTok and all of these things. I do not engage in petty fights with people that hate on my stuff. So any
Sure.
tips for people to be more positive?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a super easy one that has been really helpful for me is every morning when you wake up, think of 3 to 5 things that are positive in your day. You know, what are you thankful for? What are you happy for? Sometimes it's just the hot water in the shower, Charles. Sometimes it's, clean water, because just hot, clean water, you're already in the minority in the world when you think about that, as far as just being able to turn that on at will. There's not, there are a lot of people that have it, but there's a lot of people that don't. So you try to find 3 to 5 things every day that are you're thankful for. And then when you start to get negative, I just try to go back to those pieces and really realign with those. I have like a pain-free body, I have a sound mind, whatever it is that you have that is right in that minute. It definitely is way better than thinking of, oh, I don't have this and I don't have that, and I'll never get this, and I'll never get that. We'll never get anywhere if we always look at the glass half empty.
And in your case, how did that new mindset impacted your productivity, your wealth, and your happiness in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, productivity and health and well, all those are really each person, they're different for each person. Success to you might look like something completely different than success for me. Then somebody's listening, success is even more different. We may look at it financially, we may look at it mentally, like you mentioned, meditation. There's a variety of ways that you can do it. I just stopped comparing myself to other people and started comparing myself to the best me that I could be. Where would I like to see myself in 6 months or 6 days or 6 minutes from now? So if you're going to compare yourself with anybody, I think you're best off comparing it with yourself, maybe where you were a week ago, and say, hey, you know what? I'm better off here than I was a week ago. Then you're definitely moving in the right direction.
You've interviewed a lot of high performers yourself. What have you learned from their mindsets?
The word that keeps coming back, Charles, over and over in from a leadership and a CEO, entrepreneur perspective is vulnerability. People try to be, we as owners, we wanna have this hard, shell. We wanna act like we're really tough, which again, I'm not here to say is right or wrong, but then when we expect our team to be vulnerable, we expect our, customers to be vulnerable. We wanna understand what's going on there. So empathy and vulnerability have been 2 words that have been just paramount in the last couple years for us on our episodes from people around the world. We've had guests from 6 continents, and every continent's the same thing. We want a vulnerable team, we want a vulnerable customer. We then ourselves as leaders have to be vulnerable.
Your podcast, what is the structure exactly, and what do you want to accomplish with it?
Yeah, so we just interview guests from around the world each week, and it's about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the topic and the discussion. And it's really learning from all different sides. There's a lot of people that follow us that want to start their own business, but they don't know how. So what we do is we then ask that question, how did you start your entrepreneurial journey? Some of the guests that I have are still in corporate America trying to get into being an entrepreneur and a full-time business owner. So we love to talk about that. And again, the goal is just to allow the listener to make an informed decision when it comes to their future and how they want to look at their life.
As business owners, we tend to go through lots of trauma. What traumas have you gone through, and how did you heal?
Yeah, I tell you, we've had loss, family loss, we've had some financial loss, but at the end of the day, it's what do you really I look at why am I doing this? I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it for the fame. I'm doing it because I get emails from people that say, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for you. To me, that's what I'm looking for, and maybe that's validation from a third party, but I just love hearing that people are moving their lives forward because of something that I said or something that I did for them.
What does your day-to-day look like as an entrepreneur? What's your routine and how do you stack habits to make a better you?
Yeah, I'm on the backside of my career, so to speak. I'm going to be 60 this year, so I'm, looking at how much longer do I want to do this. We're in a spot where we're working because we want to, not because we have to. So it's a situation where I want to make sure that I invest my time with two things. Number one, I enjoy it, and number two, it's quality time for somebody else. I don't coach people that don't want to be coached. I don't invest time with people if it feels like it's, not enjoyable for them and not, good, worthwhile activity for them. So I base my day on how successful I can help others be, so that at the end of the day, again, I look back at each day and I can point, I help this person do this and this person do that. To me, that's a very successful day.
How do you measure the outcome in your coaching? And what do you do when you see that a client is not getting these expected outcomes from your coaching?
Sure. We measure by depending on what we're talking about, the team, we can measure team engagement, we can measure sales increase depending on what it is that you're trying to measure. So there's a couple different metrics there. But if somebody's not interested, then we just basically say, I call them and say, I get the feeling this isn't working for you, or we took you as far as we can. And you know what? There's times where somebody needs a different angle. Somebody might need to, fly solo for a while. We learned how to drive and we got our license and then we drove by ourselves. So sometimes, that's a longer process and sometimes it's a shorter process. So I try to watch the behavior of the individual that I'm coaching, and then we determine at that point if it's something that they're able to fly solo or do they continue to want to have somebody help them. Each person's different.
In this entrepreneurial journey, what is your take on I mean, in this capitalist system, that's a better
Mhm.
formulation. What is your view on cooperation vs competition and heart vs or with the brain?
So, I mean, competition is obviously healthy. I think it's a good thing to have. Obviously, we selfishly, I wish there wasn't competition in my space, but it just is what it is. But I think it's healthy, and so I'm okay with it. It's much better, I think, of having an arrangement where there's open competition as opposed to where there's no competition and a government or a class of people or whatever just takes over and runs whatever. So I'm totally open to competition.
Right. And how does one produce money while producing good? Because we're seeing the extreme examples of capitalists and billionaires, for example, that don't add much value to society. So how can one scale their wallet while scaling the value they add to society?
Sure. Well, there's a variety of ways that you can add value to society. Maybe you provide some income for people. Maybe you supply some of your time for people. I think that I ask my clients a lot, when is enough enough? When have you made enough money? When have you, achieved what it is that you want to do? When is that? And if people can't really identify that, then you're always going to keep going. Like I said, I'm in a place for myself personally, Charles, where I'm working because I want to, not because I have to. We've, accumulated enough that we don't need to work for whatever reason. Now we choose to work, which is a way better place to work because you want to rather than work because you have to. So I just think that, people, the capitalist side of things, I think it works well the way it is. But again, I've lived in the US my whole life, so I don't have a ton of things to compare it to other than what you see in the history books or what you see on the news.
How do you get new clients nowadays? Is it mostly your content, your podcast, or do you also do some outbound and some ads?
Yeah, the majority of my new clients come with some outbound work, but we do a lot of speaking. And when we do the speaking around the country, that's where people say, "Hey, you spoke to me about this, and I really need your help with this. So can you help me?" So we get that from that. We get it from the podcast. We get it from the book. So it's 3 or 4 different ways that we get our leads.
Interesting. For the rest of this year, you have some goals in front of you. What happens at the end of the day if you don't reach these goals?
So our goals are more yearly goals as far as financial. So I break them down into 3 goal types. I have behavior goals, I have financial goals, and then I have attitude goals. So the attitude goals are daily. When I don't succeed there, then I again want to work on what didn't work and work on better for tomorrow. When I'm looking at my behavioral goals, I use my calendar a lot for that. I have, all the follow-ups and all the different things that I need to do as an entrepreneur. And then the financial goals are pretty much on a year-to-year basis for us. And so if we don't hit them, generally we've hit the behavior goals and we've hit the finance goals. So it's really the attitude goals that I work on, Charles, because again, like you said, sometimes you just get negative. Sometimes you just get down. And so that's where I work tirelessly to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because if I'm coaching somebody and I'm negative, I'm just going to be getting them more negative as well. So I really have to learn on how to turn that on and off based on who I'm communicating with.
Who do you model nowadays? Who do you learn from? What do your learning systems look like?
I mean, I have coaches that are helping me on the speaking side. I have coaches that are helping me on the, marketing and social media side. So, I like hiring smart people like Steve Jobs said, and they tell me what to do. So that's what I like that going. So it's way more successful when someone tells me what to do rather than me always telling them what to do.
What about books, authors, CEOs, founders that you find impressive, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love John Gordon, great author. He writes a book that is very simple to read. It's a business fable, so it's a story, but yet intertwined in there is a variety of different concepts, business concepts that are really good. Same with Patrick Lencioni, same scenario where that's it's a story, but it has a message attached to it. So those are 2 of my favorite authors, and again, I just love to be able to learn from a variety of different people, but those are the 2 of my favorites.
Talking about DISC, is this report thorough? Is it just like a better structure to understand a human being? We've seen firms like Ray Dalio and Bridgewater overuse personality tests. What would be the 2.0 of DISC?
Well, I mean, so disc has been around since before, I mean, it's been around for thousands of years. The concept that people came from one of 4 different personality types. So I think that the whole idea that we use it for is to better understand yourself, but also to better understand who you're communicating with. And so it's very helpful, and from a sales perspective, Charles, 18% of buyers will buy from a sales professional that matches their personality. So if you're listening and you have any involvement in sales, the whole goal is the old concept of we people buy from people that they like, and people buy from people that they like that are like them. So I know for myself, when I'm a consumer, you're a consumer as well. You and I both would prefer to work with somebody that aligns with our personality. And how that is by learning the different styles and learning that people fall into generally one of those 4 categories. So I just want to be in that 82% spot of success that, if I'm aligned with them, they're going to buy from me. So that's where we use disc a ton in the sales world.
Love it. Gave me an idea for next cold email campaign. Dave, where can people find out more about you?
They can go on davemolenda.com, and all the information we talked about today is sitting right there ready for you.